There's no evidence of consciousness in brains. There's no evidence of consciousness in the universe apart from the fact that we know it to exist from its own side in our direct experience. And so I would say that even if we're confused about everything, consciousness is the one thing in this universe that can't be an illusion.
When it comes to meditating in a quote-unquote rational or scientific context, a couple of times you've used the word mystery. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, what exists in the realm of mystery that we don't know the answers to when it comes to 21st century secular enlightenment? We just don't know. That's a mystery, even though we're being very rational here.
Well, so there, unhelpfully, I would give you two different types of mystery. One, I think we never get rid of, right? So there are ordinary mysteries where it really is a statement, as you just made, of us just not having the right information. We don't understand something conceptually, and we will one day understand it. You know, there was a time where we had no idea how people got sick. We didn't know about viruses. We didn't know about bacteria. And then we learned something about that, you know, the germ theory of disease, and, you know, you wash your hands before surgery, et cetera. And we made progress. And so certain mysteries got resolved there, and yet further ones, you know, that we need to resolve. That kind of mystery, for the topic of this conversation, relates to consciousness itself, the fact that there's something that is like to be what we are, right? The fact that the lights are on in any sense, how that is emerging out of information processing in the brain or any other physical system, that is or even the fact that it is emerging. Right? I mean, it's possible that it goes deeper than information processing. It's possible that there's something that it's like to be an electron, and we just don't know that, right? That's a genuine mystery. We don't understand the so-called neural correlates of consciousness. We haven't, you know, there are theories about this. Some don't make a lot of sense even at first glance, but none are persuasive enough at this point for me to say, you know, as a neuroscientist or a philosopher of mind, that we're confident that we know how consciousness relates to the brain or to any physical system. And this has certain consequences. For instance, I think we will build increasingly advanced AI. We'll eventually build truly humanoid robots that strike us as utterly compelling, and we will design them in such a way so as to seem conscious. And if we haven't figured out how consciousness actually relates to information processing, we won't know whether they're conscious. And I think this is a very interesting and potentially ethically fraught situation that we're going to find ourselves in, I think, in probably a few short years. I mean, maybe 10 years or 15 years at the outside. So consciousness, just how it arises is a mystery. But I would argue that there are other sorts of mysteries, or another principle of mystery that we really never dispel in science. And it relates to the nature of just what it's like to be conscious from the first person side. And it's that on some basic level, our conceptual understanding of things doesn't really reach into the core of experience and dispel mystery, right? I mean, so you can look at any ordinary object, and you can look at your hand, or you can look at a cup on your desk, right? And if you just pay close attention to it and ask yourself, what is it, right? If you just as though seeing it for the first time, gaze upon this object and ask yourself, what is it? You'll find that you have a lot of language you can throw at it, right? You can begin thinking about how this thing relates to other things. You have a name for it. You can keep reiterating that name in your mind. You can say hand and hand over and over again, right? But that doesn't really reach in to the thing itself. There's a kind of suchness to any experience, even the most ordinary experience, that is intrinsically mysterious. So there's just this mystery of being that begins to shine through everything. And that is itself the mystery of consciousness, the mystery that anything is appearing at all, right? And I would say that the mystery of consciousness presents us in every moment with the subjective version of the fundamental mystery of the cosmos, which is, why is there something rather than nothing? Why is anything here? Why are there laws of nature? I mean, it's not enough to say, okay, we've begun to understand the laws of nature, and they have produced, everything that we can be aware of. Well, but why is there anything, including the laws of nature? Right? That's I think an irreducible mystery, and I do think consciousness. Why is there anything that it's like to be what you are? Presents the subjective version of that mystery. It is irreducibly mysterious that the lights are on. And I don't think, even if we understand consciousness conceptually, I don't think, this is the so-called hard problem of consciousness in the philosophy of mind. I think it will always seem like a miracle to us. I don't think there's a way of describing unconscious complexity and asserting that some pattern there produces consciousness that's going to be self-explanatory, that's going to seem like it should have been intuitively obvious that, okay, well that explains consciousness. Now I get it, right? I don't think we're going to have that experience, and it's important to point out that for that purpose, consciousness is unlike any other phenomenon we've ever sought to explain scientifically. I mean, there are things that we thought we would never explain, and we've explained them. Things like life, right? I mean, people thought, life you can't explain life, right? And there was a point where we had this notion of an élan vital, a life essence or life spirit that would differentiate, an inanimate object from an animate one, or a dead organism from a live one. But now we know that life, it can be defined in terms of how systems function, right? Whether they metabolize energy, whether they grow, et cetera, whether they reproduce, right? We have all these extrinsic criteria that demarcate living systems from dead ones, and there are certain cases where it's kind of arbitrary, and we're not even sure whether something's alive or not. Like in the case of a virus, I don't think we've decided whether we think viruses are alive or not. Really, they're kind of at the boundary. But consciousness is intrinsically what it is from its own side, right? Consciousness is not defined, and I would argue it cannot be defined from the outside. I mean, there's no evidence of consciousness in brains. There's no evidence of consciousness in the universe apart from the fact that we know it to exist from its own side in our direct experience. And so I would say that even if we're confused about everything, consciousness is the one thing in this universe that can't be an illusion, right? Because even if everything is illusory, even if we're in the matrix, right, or if we're brains in vats, I mean, we're just totally confused about what we are. This seeming appearance demonstrates the reality of consciousness as much as any veridical appearance could. So, I mean, consciousness is the ground truth of our being, moment to moment. And again, I'm not making metaphysics out of that, but I think it is from the point of view of our flourishing as conscious creatures. I think realizing this and experiencing it more deeply is the most important thing we can learn to do.
Discover on-demand videos and docuseries, explore a full schedule of daily live classes, and become part of an incredible community. At Sounds True One, we invite you inward to find your way your way.